Today I want to reveal that some cultures are more accomplished than others, and much of their accomplishments can be explained by different cultural attitudes, which in my opinion I believe are more related to economic outcomes of those cultures concerned, more so than many other reasons that have been touted by the conventional intellectual vision, such as natural resource endowments. Many third-world countries languish in poverty despite possessing a gigantic supply of natural resources. Japan and Singapore have proven to not possess natural resource levels that come anywhere near those of the DRC and Russia, but their stories of economic prosperity are beyond remarkable. This podcast dwells on the culture of aversion to menial work that has been common among the Hispanics, Portuguese, the Malays. I would add South Africans as well, with specific reference to personal hygiene. So, just a bit of a backstory. When traveling through the early morning market and many popular streets in the Durban Central Business District, I am always amazed by people's neglect of the notion of cause and effect, initiative and personal urgency. The audacity of shameless littering that I witness by the street vendors or the general public on a daily basis is beyond shocking, and it wholly explains why the CBD has turned into such a dump. And so we need to rethink our attitudes as Africans toward the environment and the precious planet. Now let's juxtapose our attitudes to that of the Japanese. We saw how disciplined the Japanese were throughout the entirety of the World Cup campaign back in 2022. They would remain behind in the stadiums and clean up after everyone. They left their home country behind, but they crossed those political borders over to Qatar with a positive mindset and attitude toward the environment. Japan has no problem in getting its own people to keep their cities clean because such menial work carries no stigma in Japan. However, here in South Africa, I think people do exhibit a sense of disdain toward keeping our cities clean, whereby the street vendors and people leave the job of keeping the city trash-free to the municipality instead of cleaning up the environment free of charge, much the same as it is free of charge to tarnish the environment with litter at such a grand scale that I've seen people do it. Now, throughout this process, there's also an emergence of economic wastage where it costs everybody nothing to tarnish the environment with trash and urine, but the municipality and the taxpayers and the Durban Tourism Department millions of rands through citywide cleanup schemes. In the absence of such a lack of collective responsibility toward keeping our environment clean, those millions of rands would have been useful in remedying more urgent socio-economic issues that are gripping this country, such as poverty, infrastructure development. I would also add unemployment. I think there is a confluence of social forces that sort of discourage us as blacks from acting responsibly toward the environment. The biggest of those factors are, in my opinion, it's the government itself and parenting. How we've come to do parenting and how the government conducts education from primary to senior level do not overemphasize the values and importance of personal hygiene. But this is comical because the government even fails miserably in fulfilling the most basic, universally established goals of education, which are literacy, learning proficiencies, and overall just quality education. The statistics point out that more than 3/4 of 4th grade learners cannot read for comprehension in our public schools. Most black parents, especially those in deep rural areas, are not well educated themselves. Therefore, they don't have that sense of knowing how far quality education can take you in terms of academic, corporate, and economic success. So they would not care most probably and will be far divorced from their own children's education, and it becomes a vicious cycle. South Africa is a nerve-wracking story because infrastructure is crumbling, unemployment stubbornly high, crime levels, poor education, you name it. Yet there is always departments, manpower, tenders assigned to the tasks of fixing all of those things that are falling apart, but they are not being fixed. Back to personal hygiene. The habits of littering that I've seen in Durban amounts to cultural degeneracy. If we want to see improvements in our culture, we need to borrow heavily from the habits of the Japanese or even Rwanda, for those of you who who are proponents of the, I forgot the name, but for those of you that want an African example of what cleanliness looks like, you have Rwanda as a model that we need to follow. But the bottom line is that we need to rise from this deranged condition so that we can acculturate to the requirements and norms for keeping our cities and environments clean.